Hey everyone, CWD Music Reviews here. I am CWD, and this is going to be a music review of the new Animal Collective album, Painting With. Animal Collective is the long-time running Neo-Psychedelia, psych pop, indie rock, indie pop outfit, most noted for having the members Panda Bear and Aviator. They've actually almost existed for 20 years now, and this is their latest full-length album. Animal Collective has always kind of been this really esoteric and really inaccessible band to listen to for the world of psychedelic music. For reasons such as on albums like Feels or Strawberry Jam or Meriwether Post Pavilion, they take all these sounds and just kind of turn it into this really weird and off-kilter funnel that a lot of Animal Collective fans would say, oh well, you only get it when you're high. And that turned me off at first, since I don't really do substances. So I figured, okay, maybe if I listen to these albums a few more times, I'll get it. And eventually I did. So in 2012, they dropped their album Centipede Hurts, and that was disappointing as hell. Decent album, but I can't say that there was a lot in terms of memorability amongst the songwriting. It kind of sounded more like a continuation of what they were doing on Meriwether Post Pavilion, except a bit more inaccessible and just not as memorable or interesting. Fast forward 4 years later, and now we have this new Animal Collective album, and I was certainly looking forward to it. I listened to the initial singles and liked them a lot. And as far as if these three singles foretold for a great album or a really good album, I think it did. The album opens up with Floridada, which opens up with this like looping beat pattern before getting introduced with some live drumming that was sampled. And there's like a few things that you can notice about this album. One, there's no reverb. It's completely done away with, which is really refreshing, seeing as the majority of rock music, pop music, experimental music, or R&B music seems to be really interested in this. For a band to consciously just do away with it entirely is an interesting experiment that I think goes pretty well throughout the album. Another thing about this track and the other tracks on the album is the vocal harmonies. Oh my god, these vocal harmonies. They're so catchy and really grab your ear. There's like so many vocal arpeggios and vocal layerings and all these harmonies going about that may be a bit complex for the ear, since these vocals are being used more so as an instrument than just traditional vocals. Like on Floridada, which has a very catchy hook. These vocals from Panda Bear and Aviator just trading with each other in like different speakers, and that's pretty interesting. Another thing about this album is how Baroque it seems to get. I don't think much Neo-Psychedelia has experimented with Baroque pop or anything of that nature, certainly. There's like a kind of a Paul Simon or Crosby, Stills and Nash vibe to these songwriting patterns. That is to say, if they all did a lot of drugs or something. This track also features some saxophone from Mr. Colin Stetson, which was a really good addition, especially how he really implements his use of circular breathing. Maybe the playing was just sampled that well. His playing kind of reminds me of Stetson's album, New History Warfare 2, Judges. From there, each track has its own solid composition and has its own flavor to it. Like the track Hocus Pocus, which opens up with this woman talking about this situation on the freeway, kind of like a traffic reporter. She's like, the freeway looks pretty clear today. No dinosaurs to report, which is kind of trippy. And once again, these vocal harmonies come in and really grab my ear. I think the one complaint I have about this album is how the vocals seem to be taking a higher priority than the instrumentals, but like I said, these vocals arguably are being used as part of the instrumentals. I don't really see much reason to complain that much about it. The track also features a drone delivered by none other than Mr. John Cale of Velvet Underground fame. This drone aligns really well with the da-da-da-da-da-da vocals and the beats going on. Vertical, I think, is probably my second least favorite track on the album. It's not bad, it's just, none of these tracks are bad per se, it's just that there's not much to what the track is doing. It goes on for longer than it needs to, especially when it gets to like the latter half of the track where the chorus is just going on for a minute. Too much of a good thing is not really that good. When we get to one of the singles, Lying in the Grass, I'm definitely down with this. The vocals are really cool on this track, especially how jittery Panabaron, Aviator, and Geologist's vocals just kind of duel with each other in a way. And there's like these muted trumpet that pops up every now and again in the track. And there's like these vocal sample that glides throughout the track really well. It's funny how these moments are done so well without reverb, kind of sullying any of these tracks. Like I said, really refreshing that a Neo-Psychedelia band is not using reverb on an album. Then we got the Burglars, which the vocal delivery seems to fast forward itself to the point where either the sampling just really makes the vocals go faster than they're supposed to, or these vocals are borderline rapping. Then we get Bagels in Kiev, which has like this kind of a Middle Eastern Russian fusion composition that seems to be interesting, especially how kind of off-kilter and subdued, but subdued in a good way that it gets. To get to the last 3 tracks in the album, Some in the Wretch actually features these downward arpeggio vocals, driving synth. There's quite a bit of synth patterns on this album that I think are pretty interesting. Like on Hocus Pocus, like on Floridada, like on The Burglars and Bagels in Kiev, and on Delay, which sounds like it kind of delays a little, but then it just really comes in. The last single on the song, Golden Gal, is an interesting track to use as like the second to last track before the closer. Golden Gal actually features this sample of a episode from the Golden Girls. One of the characters says, "No, she's just upset they keep changing the flavor of Coke." And then it gets really uplifting and really catchy. Kind of Beach Boys sounding. There's another thing about this album, there is kind of a Beach Boys vibe. It really builds really well, and like the vocals get more impassioned over time. I don't know who the person they're singing about is, but it's really touching to hear them singing so passionately for this person. Then in the closing track, Recycling, which has like this analog synth odyssey at the beginning of it before it takes on another synth that kind of like ebbs and flows before the beat comes in. This vibe actually reminds me of some Sigur Rós type builds or maybe some Coldplay type compositions, and I think that's really interesting, especially how it guides out and pretty much displays itself as the definitive outro. This album I think is really good. There's not too much I can say that was a detriment. Each track has its own flavor of vocal harmonies and synth patterns and beats that, while they are similar and they feel similar, they're still solid compositions throughout. There's not really too much I can say that in terms of negatives, like Vertical goes on for too long, but the track Spilling Guts I think is maybe a tad underdeveloped. It's a bit short. But other than that, I really enjoyed this album. I'm glad Animal Collective were able to come back and actually put out something that's, I think, is really good, or at least really memorable in terms of what Centipede Hurts was. Not sure if this will be my favorite album of the month or not. I mean, it's certainly close, but we'll see. I think this has a lot of replayability, and I hope if Animal Collective do convene to make more music in the future, that they take note of this new, more Baroque-ish sound they're trying to go for, and really expound on that and really make a great album. This album is a plus 2.4 out of plus 3. Yeah, I really enjoyed this album a lot. I can't wait for my CD to get in the mail so I can start playing it in my car regularly. But if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reasoning behind that, and what should I consider reviewing next? The CWD Reviews here, signing off.